E3 is a time when anything is possible. Announcements that we never could have dreamed possible get made. Games we thought we wouldn't be seeing for a long time get shown off. And new IPs pop up out of nowhere and take the industry by storm. But then again, there are some announcements that seem a bit uncertain even for this magical week. In this feature, we'll be taking a look at 10 such announcements. Announcements that most likely won't be made at E3, but if hypothetically they were, they'd break the internet. So, let's get started. Half-Life 3. No, that's a bit too uncertain. Seriously though, let's get started. Grand Theft Auto 6. Rockstar have settled into a cycle where they take their sweet time with their games, but when they're ready to come out with their new products, boy do they impress everyone. Red Dead Redemption 2 launched just last year, so it's unlikely we'll be seeing another game from them very soon, but we do know for a fact they're working on Grand Theft Auto 6. It's very unlikely that we see the game at E3 this year, or even next year for that matter. But Grand Theft Auto is one of the biggest franchises in the industry, while Grand Theft Auto 5 is just one of the biggest games ever, period. Seeing a sequel would shake the entire industry. Bully 2. How long have we been asking for a Bully sequel? Since the game's launch all those years ago, we've received re-releases and ports, but a sequel remains frustratingly elusive. At this point, given Rockstar's development cycles that we just spoke of, and how well both GTA and Red Dead do for them, it's hard to imagine them working on a Bully 2. And yet, we keep hearing rumblings of a sequel. Rumors and speculation about a Bully 2 have popped up with surprising frequency for a number of years now. So it's hard at this point to figure out if there's any fire under this smoke, or if it's all just wishful thinking. One thing's for sure though, if Rockstar were ever to announce the game, the announcement would be met with an absolute explosion of joy. Final Fantasy XVI. There was a gap of 6 years between Final Fantasy XIII and XV, but given the troubled development of the latter, it's fair to assume or hope that the next single-player Final Fantasy title won't make us wait too long. Luminous Productions are working on something. We don't know what it is or when it'll come out, but the studio has got irons in the fire for sure. Could Square Enix then be ready to announce Final Fantasy XVI in the near future? It seems unlikely. One would assume that that's a game they want to save for next gen, and the fact that they're going to be focusing on Final Fantasy VII Remake for a while also means that a sequel might not happen for a while. Whenever it does happen, we just hope it doesn't end up being in development for nearly a decade, the way Final Fantasy XV was in some form or another. Retro Studios game. Retro Studios have been awfully quiet for a while. Their last game, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, came out all the way back in 2014, and that's the last we heard of them. We know now that they recently took on the rebooted Metroid Prime 4, but there was almost a 5-year gap between those two projects. They couldn't just have been sitting around doing nothing, right? So why are we still uncertain that their next game will be revealed soon? Well, because we've been burned one time too many. We keep hoping and hoping every few months that this is the event where Retro's new game will be unveiled, and yet it never happens. Those Star Fox Grand Prix rumors ended up amounting to nothing, or so it seems, and we're no closer to finding out what Retro has been working on than we were a couple years ago. Still, like the optimistic fools we are, we're hoping Nintendo finally unveils Retro's mystery project this year. Resident Evil 3 Remake. This year's Resident Evil 2 was a massive success for Capcom by every metric. It was universally loved by critics and audiences. It did justice to a beloved classic as a modernized remake, and it's been selling very well too. It seems almost a given that Capcom will continue remaking older Resident Evil titles, and vague hints from them coupled with multiple unverified leaks suggest that a Resident Evil 3 remake is definitely happening. It's unlikely that we'll see it so close to RE2's launch. One would assume there'd be at least a 2-year gap, if not more. But that's kind of the point of dreaming. Resident Evil 8. But of course, it's not just with trips down memory lane that Resident Evil has found success of late. 2017's Resident Evil 7 revived the franchise resoundingly, once again reinventing itself and doing so with great aplomb. There have of course been leaks about Resident Evil 8 as well, but we never really needed any leaks to know that there would be a Resident Evil 8. But can it happen anytime soon? Though a bit uncertain, seeing as next gen is right around the corner, it's not quite as uncertain as RE3. It's been 2 years since Resident Evil 7 now, which means that team has had plenty of time to work on whatever comes next. While it's also worth pointing out that there wasn't a huge gap between the release of RE7 and the announcement of RE2. Fingers crossed, I guess, but let's not get our hopes up too high anyway. New ONIMUSHA. Earlier this year, Capcom brought back ONIMUSHA, well, to an extent. They remastered the first game in the series and made it available on modern systems. One would assume they did it to test the waters, to see if ONIMUSHA was a name that still commanded the kind of love and attention it once did. We don't know if Capcom were pleased with the results, but playing the remaster sure sold us one fact. ONIMUSHA at its best was amazing, and we need more of it. It's been far too long, and a revival of the beloved franchise is something millions are hoping for. That said, even if Capcom were indeed working on a new ONIMUSHA title, the probability of it getting announced this year seems a bit on the low side, sadly enough. So we might have to end up waiting a while longer. New 3D Zelda. Of course there's going to be a new 3D Zelda. You don't need to be a genius to figure that out. It's Zelda, so there was always going to be a new one no matter what. And considering how Breath of the Wild has been for Nintendo, that becomes doubly true. Thanks to job listings and statements from Nintendo, we also know for a fact that they're already working on a sequel as well. Seeing it get announced at E3 this year would be a dream come true for series fans, especially after Breath of the Wild took so long to launch, having faced multiple delays, but it might be a bit too soon for that. Link's Awakening's remake is coming out later this year, so Nintendo might want to focus on that and not steal any attention away from it. But here's hoping we're wrong, and against all odds, we end up seeing Breath of the Wild's follow-up next week anyway. Crash Bandicoot. Activision's Crash Bandicoot revival could not have gone any better. Insane Trilogy was an excellent collection of remakes, and not only did it review well, it also sold extremely well. Well enough to make Activision realize that they're sitting on a gold mine. So yes, odds are we're gonna see a new Crash platforming game from them eventually. But can we see one in 2019? We don't know, actually. We're not sure we will, but we're not sure we won't either. It's uncertain because the announcement would be a surprise, what with there having been next to no rumblings whatsoever. Though the chances are slim, the prospect of a proper new Crash platformer is a salivating one. Banjo-Kazooie. N64's Banjo games were some of the best platformers of their time, and definitely one of the best games Rare have ever worked on. We've been hoping for a proper follow-up, no, nuts and bolts doesn't count, for ages now, and, well, we're still waiting. As unlikely as it seems after all this time that our wait might come to an end soon, it's worth pointing out that Microsoft's view on first parties has changed radically of late. Banjo is a property with some cash and a strong fan base, and it's not completely out of the question that Microsoft might consider bringing it back. A couple of leaks here and there certainly suggest so. Fingers crossed, I guess, but temper your expectations too.
And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, please hit the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to switch on the notifications bell icon next to it. That way you'll never miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.